Come on, Lane.
Lock her up.
Okay, I think we are live on YouTube. Greg, do you want to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, or do you want to do some introductions?
Well, let's start the meeting first. Let's start our first, the Avon Town Council electronic meetings as of today's date, April 23rd. And let's do the call to order, please. Tommy, you want to do that, or Julie, you're going to do that?
I'll take roll call.
Yes, please.
Greg Zuzen,
Here.
Don Loudon,
Present.
Robert Pope,
Present.
Aaron Teevabaugh,
Present.
Steve Eisenbarth.
Present. Did you hear me? Present.
Yes, thank you.
Do we need to include Dan or Ryan or anybody else on the call?
Well, we can do introductions if you want for everyone else that's on the screen for the benefit of our viewers on YouTube. Ryan, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Ryan Cannon. I'm the Assistant Town Manager and Public Works Director.
Greg, do you want me to continue with my staff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Dan,
I'm Dan Taylor. I'm the town attorney.
Sean,
Sean Stoops, Chief of Police.
Brian,
Brian Nugent, Deputy Chief, Police Department.
John,
John Taylor, Director of Economic Development.
and I'm Tom Klein, Town Manager. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dan. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag,
United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty, justice for all.
Hey, Tom,
Yes,
it's kind of confusing with that up there because before we could see everyone when they were talking because the yellow line came up and now we can't.
okay. Would you guys prefer not to have the agenda up there on the screen and see everyone?
I have a copy of it in front of me, so I'm fine without it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, same. Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
Okay, first of all, we need to amend the agenda. We have an item, Resolution 2020-10, that needs to be added. So we need a motion to amend the agenda.
Mr. President, I recommend that we suspend the rules and amend the agenda to accept Resolution 2020-10.
We have a motion by Steve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Robert. Is there any further discussion?
no.
Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
Four.
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teevabaugh,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
So with that, then we're going to put Resolution 2020-10 on the agenda, and that'll be our first piece of business. Tom, you want to walk us through Resolution 2020-10?
Dan, do you want to explain?
Yeah, this resolution is necessitated by two of the many things that have happened since you met last on March 18th. And so the first thing is that the governor entered an executive order allowing virtual meetings like this, which is fine, except that you have your own rules of procedure, which would not allow it. So the first purpose of the resolution is to override your own rules of procedure to allow virtual meetings consistent with the governor's order. And the second thing is that the State Board of Accountants issued guidance in which they say that every time you do have a meeting, they want you to approve and ratify the approval of any claims or any other emergency power action that has been taken since your last meeting. And so probably you'll see one of these resolutions every time you meet. So the resolution indicates that Mr. Zuzan has approved, may have approved claims since your last meeting, and to the extent that he has, you approve and ratify those. And those are the two things this resolution does.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
Dan, I was just curious, should we have a synopsis of things that were decided since the last meeting back on March 18th? Would that be helpful, or, just so we know what we're ratifying?
Yeah, I think Greg has just approved claims is all I'm aware of. Is that right, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, he just approved claims in the interim period from March 18th until now. Those claims are all before you tonight. You're going to take action on them. But
Okay.
the State Board of Accounts wants there to be a resolution. And when you all approve claims, usually don't do a resolution, so it picks up that.
Gotcha. Okay, no other questions.
Steve, I
Yeah.
did email the one and only time that Greg has approved claims during this process. I did copy all of you in on that check register. So you have that in an email to go and look over if you need to.
Okay, sounds good, Julie. Thanks.
If there are no other questions, we need somebody to make a motion then regarding resolution 2020-10.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Don.
2020-10 as presented.
We have a motion by Dawn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Steve. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Aaron Teveba,
Four.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzan.
4. Thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the items on the consent agenda? If not, would somebody make a motion then, please?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Aaron. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Dawn to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzan,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
The next item on the agenda is the first of 2 public comments. If you have any public comments, you can submit those by emailing Tom Klein, our town manager, at tklein@avangov.org, or via the comment area on the YouTube during the meeting. The public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Tom, is there anybody that has submitted any comments?
I am checking right now. I'm checking my email. I do not see any comments on my email, and I'm checking on YouTube right now. It is a few seconds behind, but I do not see any comments at this time. I would remind anyone that's watching, there is a second comment period at the end of the meeting. So if you're caught by surprise of this process, feel free to email me or chat or post it during the meeting, and I'll check it for the second public comment period.
Okay, then without any comments or anybody coming forward, we'll close that portion of our agenda and move to council comment and liaison reports. Dawn, do you have anything?
I do have something from the Avon Parks and Recreation Department. During the week ending April 24th, 2020, we've seen an 18% increase in the last 7 days, multiple posts per day with a 41% increase in video views. The Yoga Live on Facebook successfully matched the yoga attendance in person, usually around 15 to 20 people in attendance, and we had 19 online viewers for that event. The Show Your Support Live successfully matched Painting in the Park attendance, usually around 20 in-person attendees. We had 15 viewers with over 300 total views before it was over. On the spring tree sale, we sold 60 trees. It was the most successful tree sale in recent history. It included 44 trees and 16 shrubs. And then with the farmers market, they want us to know that they are committed to it being I guess still, they're trying to figure out how it's going to work under the current climate here. And because it is an essential role that we play here in the community, and that people really like it, and they want to make sure that we still figure out how to have it even through this time. That's it on that.
If people, while they're listening, if you would mute your phones or turn down your volume or mute your volume so when someone's talking, when you're rustling papers and stuff, it doesn't make background noise. Anybody else? Robert, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I have some police highlights, but first, I just wanted to add two things. One, I want to make sure that we, the council, hasn't lost sight of Tom's expectations for the year. I know this was important to us at the beginning of the year, that we not go through another year without setting those expectations so we can give a proper review. The other is make sure that we can probably be using this time to push on the township consolidation. There's relationships that we can build. We've discussed that, but I'm just sort of raising that flag again to make sure we're staying on top of that. I'll take another minute to add some Avon PD highlights. Thanks, Chief Stoops, for this. 4 of our 5 new officers have started in the past week and this week. One of them is ILE trained. He came from Franklin. The other 3 officers will be starting orientation, I think, this week. Let me see the next one. Avon PD appears to be doing very well as far as PPE goes, and our employees are appearing to maintain, our police officers are appearing to maintain a healthy status. So kudos to their leadership. That's it for me.
Thank you for your comments, Robert. I think too, you'll see on the agenda, I put in there council comment. I kind of want to capture some of the things you just talked about and anything else on certainly that 18 list projects that we kind of tried to prioritize so we don't lose sight of it. So thank you for that. Aaron, did you have anything?
Just a kudos to all the staff that's keeping the ship afloat while we're on this hiatus. As I drive around, the streets are clean. They're a little empty, but everything's looking great. And I really appreciate everyone that's going above and beyond to continue to keep things as normal as possible. Looks like we might get some light at the end of the tunnel here within the next few weeks. So just hold strong and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Aaron. Steve, did you have any comments?
Just DPW, Ryan and I have been in touch on several items, and Dan Jones Road, the 3 pipes crossing in front of the Fairwood development, that's, the water, sewer, and storm. That will be a full closure, and under the current low traffic, it is actually an ideal situation. I really appreciate the way that the staff has been putting together the coordination with Plainfield, that the detour route is not going to go at the same time that they have construction down there. And then watching the governor's order, making sure we get it in before things get relaxed and we start getting heavy traffic. So I thought that was good. It's a large trench, and it's going to be, it's probably going to be the smartest way to do this. Other thing is milling and patching continues throughout the town. Gable Drive and 900 and several other places. That's good. Maybe later on, Ryan can comment about whether he thinks the COVID's going to slow down any of this process. But right now, we're not seeing that. It's been moving along well, and I'm very pleased with that and grateful for that. Last thing I just want to say is maybe to anyone listening about council comment about coping with this whole virus thing is that, you know, we appreciate you as a community, and we sincerely want to, you know, hold your respect and make sure that we can do what we're supposed to be doing. So I just want to encourage everyone to, you know, persevere and work out their life and life balance, work balance, you know, making a space at home to work. And just if we have any anxieties and things, let's share it with our employers, with the healthcare places or our local town, you know, mental health facilities. Don't feel bad about asking for stuff. No one likes being coped up. I'm coped up when I've got a family of 5 living with us, so it's a little fun over here. So I know all of us are doing different things, but that's enough said. That's all.
Steve, do you know what days they're going to have the roads closed then?
I'm going to defer to Ryan, but I know they're asking for a week, and I talked to the contractor directly, and it's likely to be less than that. Ryan, would you like to comment at this time, or Greg, do you want to have Ryan comment now or later?
Oh, if you could comment now, that's fine.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Greg. Yes, it's going to close on Monday morning on the 27th. And we're saying that the closure will continue through May 1st. So it's basically Monday to Friday next week. And if they're able to get it complete and reopened before the 1st, they will do that.
Now, do we have signs up alerting people to this closure?
Yes, we do. Signs went up last Saturday.
Well, obviously, if they can get it done sooner the better, that benefits everybody. And I guess from a timing standpoint, like Steve said, everybody's staying at home now, at least through the 1st of May. So this is a good time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only comments I really have is, again, thanking staff, thanking Julie, thanking Tom, Sean. I guess no news is good news. And I probably haven't spoken to everybody for maybe a week or so now, and that's not because I'm ignoring you. There's really not a lot out there that there is to discuss. I think the staff has done a great job. Knock on wood, keep our fingers crossed that we can stay out of harm's way. And let's not be too quick to reopen things. Let's not be hasteful, but let's try to make calculated decisions. And I'm kind of just following the governor's lead. You know, he's the one that, you know, started this. I'll let him carry through, and we'll just kind of follow his lead. But I think as we talk later on, we do have to start thinking about maybe starting, you know, to bring people back into the town hall here, maybe the first week of May or so. But that's a conversation I think we need to be cognizant about. The next item on the agenda is the proclamation for the 2020 Arbor Day. Mr. Klein. You're muted, Tom. There you go.
Sorry about that. This is the annual proclamation for Arbor Day, which is actually tomorrow. As part of our Tree City USA designation, the council declares an annual Arbor Day, and then we usually have an Arbor Day event with the schools, and we'll be delaying that, and we'll be having that later in the year, have some type of tree ceremony. But this is one of the requirements to maintain our Tree City USA designation.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the awarding bid for the pavement marking project. Ryan, you want to walk us through this?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is Ryan Cannon, Public Works Director. As the council is aware, last year we did attempt to bid our pavement marking project twice, and bids came in twice what our engineer's estimate was. So this year we're basically lumping together about 2 years of pavement marking, and we tried to get it out early so that we could take advantage of good prices before contractors got busy. And there's basically 3 pavement marking contractors in central Indiana. We did send it to all 3 of them. We did get a bid from one company. The low bid that we received was for $124,000. $733.90. Our engineer's estimate was $182,186. So it is staff's recommendation that the town council approve the low bid from Indiana Traffic Services for not to exceed $124,733.90 for the 2020 pavement marking project. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon?
Ryan, you may just explain to the public, if they're looking at the hard copy where you mentioned that the bid is good. And I know what you mean by that, responsible, capacity contractor and things. But could you say a couple words about what makes that, besides a low number, what makes a good bid?
Sure, they've got to be a low, responsive, and responsible bidder. And then they also have to provide financial statements. They have to provide proof that they're capable and able to complete the project. They have to give us people who they've worked for before and what kind of outstanding work they have. And so all of that information is reviewed and considered before we recommend approving the bid.
Thanks. Just thought that might help. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. We need someone to make a motion then to approve the awarding of the pavement marking project.
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid with Indiana Traffic Services in the amount of $124,733.90.
We have a motion by Don. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Robert. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Aaron Teveba. Aaron Teveba. You're muted.
4.
Steve Eisenbart.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Greg Zuzan.
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approving selection of the construction engineer for the flashing beacon project. Mr. Cannon?
Yes, the town was awarded federal funds to do a new school zone flashing beacon project. The project is a 90-10 split, 90% being federal aid and 10% being the local match. What we will do with these is we will actually we'll replace the existing school zone signs with these flashing beacons. And then we will also modify our ordinance to change from specific times to that school zones, people need to slow down in school zones when the lights are flashing. And so this is improved technology over the signs that we have. It both improves the safety for pedestrians and students and cars that are going to schools, as well as it helps the function of cars going as well, so that when there's times where people don't need to slow down, they're able to continue to travel at safe speeds on our roadways. So as federal process requires, we do have to do what's called a request for qualifications, and engineers submit their qualifications to us to complete the work. This one in particular is for the construction engineer, who is the person who inspects the project. So in this case, we did have 3 engineering firms that submitted qualifications. We did have a selection committee. It consisted of Gerald Glover, our street superintendent, myself, and then Steve as the public works liaison. And then Dawn assisted us as well in reviewing it. So we were the 4 committee members. And all of us recommended that Etika be selected for the job. And so it is the selection committee's recommendation that you approve the selection of Etika.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cannon?
Ryan, you scored 0 for North Point. I'm just curious why that's such an outlier on the rest of that scoring.
North Point's proposal didn't show that they had experience doing projects like this before. So each of these firms sometimes they're better at doing certain things than others. And so while North Point was certainly qualified as an engineering company, they did not have the same kind of experience that Etica did and that Crossroads did doing school zone flashing beacon projects. And so that's why they didn't score as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Ryan, I appreciate you putting everybody's scores there. I think that talk about transparency, that's good. And I look forward when we can keep new people and different people involved. And I know no one really wants to do the public works stuff, but I think it's interesting. But I do sincerely appreciate everyone putting in their numbers and being able to think through the proposals, and they are interesting to go through. So thank you, Ryan, for that, posting that.
If there are no other questions, then we need a motion for the selection of the construction engineer for the flashing beacon project.
I'll make a motion that we accept as Public Works has recommended Etica for not to exceed $18,500 for construction engineering on the school zone flashing beacon project.
Second.
I think you got part of the second one in there in your resolution or your motion.
Did I?
Because we haven't gotten to the dollar amount yet.
Oh, sorry. Okay, just the awarding of the construction engineers is my intention. Aaron, are you okay with that for the second?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further comments? Roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
Or
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveball,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
okay, and then the next item on the agenda is the awarding of the contract for the construction engineer for the flat project.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned, the next step, once you guys approve the selection, is then to enter into a contract with Etica. So on these construction engineering projects, they are basically time and materials. So you'll notice in their proposal, they provide rates and they provide an estimate of the amount of time that will be invested by their inspectors on the project. And that's a direct correlation to what their fee is. It is time and materials. So if they end up spending less time, it could potentially be less. If the project runs longer or something happens that causes it to run longer, it can end up being more. And so that's what their proposal is. Typically between, we expect their proposal to be somewhere between 12.5% and 15%. You'll notice that on this one, Etica's around 12.5%. Etica, being that they're a local firm here in town off of Dan Jones Road, they have the ability. This project's a relatively small project for inspection, and so they will be able to be flexible where they could actually be working on other jobs. And when they only have critical aspects of the project, they can be on site. And so the fact that they're a local firm helps do that. And so I think that certainly also is showing up in their proposal as well, that their fee is pretty reasonable, especially this type of project where they're just basically doing concrete foundations and then erecting poles. It makes it convenient that they can be out on those days. But on days where there aren't things going on because we're waiting on delivery of materials, we don't have an inspector just sitting around. So I think that has helped reduce the cost of this proposal. So it is staff's recommendation that you approve the attached contract with Etica for not to exceed $18,500 for construction engineering for the school zone flashing beacon project. Happy to answer any questions.
Ryan and I spoke, and just so everybody knows, this includes all the schools. It includes our Lutheran, Shepherd Lutheran School. It includes Kingsway and all the Avon school corporations as part of this project. So, any questions for Mr. Cannon?
I love the
a motion.
90-10 splits. That's all I got to say.
I have a question, and just really for clarification, it's going to be solar powered, correct?
I'm sorry, Don, you broke up. I didn't hear what you said.
I said,
Solar.
just for clarification, it's going to be solar powered.
Yes, that's correct. They will be solar powered.
Ryan, why don't you talk too about, you're the one that's going to control the data entry into this and not the schools. And so why don't you just briefly talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So you guys may notice if you looked at the actual cost estimate, we're slightly over what our federal funding is. And so part of that is we've actually included with this project the ability to remote access it. So someone in my department, it may be me, Jasmine, Gerald, somebody will have the ability to program the flashing beacons from their desk. And so we'll remotely program those to go off. And so we've worked with the school corporation, and they will provide us the information for each of the schools, and that then we will upload into the program to make the individual schools. As you guys know, in Avon, all the schools start at different times. So some of them may need to flash at a different time than others. And so this system that we're installing is smarter and more intelligent, and it'll give us more flexibility. And as I said earlier, it'll allow us to create a safer situation for all of these schools, including, like Greg said, Kingsway and our Shepherd Lutheran Church as well.
Thank you, Ryan. If there's no further questions, would somebody like to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid and the amount as proposed on a not to exceed basis. I just lost the page, but what, 18,500, is that what it was? I think.
That's correct. Yeah, 18,500.
Found it. Yes. For the school zone flashing beacon project.
We have a motion by Mr. Eisenbarth. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Teveball. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveball,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-08, a resolution approving order of Plan Commission. Mr. Klein or Mr. Taylor, you want to walk us through this?
I'll actually do it, Greg.
Okay, Ryan, sorry.
So as the town council is aware, we are working on an economic development project called Avon Landing. And as you guys are aware, we entered into a letter of intent with them as far as what we're doing. And a little later here on the agenda is an agreement with them. But this is part of the process. One of the things we agreed to do as part of that letter of intent was to create an allocation area number 2, which is where the apartments will be on the west side, or sorry, on the east side of Ronald Reagan Parkway as part of Avon Landing. And so we are going through the process of creating that allocation area. So that process begins with the Redevelopment Commission. And so the Redevelopment Commission approved a declaratory resolution. And then that declaratory resolution determines that this area fits with our comprehensive plan in terms of an area where we want there to be economic development. And so the next step in that process then is for the Plan Commission to make that determination that it is consistent with our comprehensive plan and that it is an area for economic development. So it's basically a check on the Redevelopment Commission. And so they have approved at their meeting on the 16th, they approved a resolution saying that those things were true. And so they have forwarded this to you guys with a recommendation to approve it. And so this is basically your guys' step in the process to say, to confirm what the Plan Commission said, that it is consistent with our economic or our comprehensive plan, and we want economic development to occur there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon? If If there are no questions, would somebody like to make a motion regarding resolution 2020-08?
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution 2020-08 as written.
We have a motion by Mr. Pope. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Loudon. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
Four.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4,
Aaron Teveball,
Or
Greg Zuzen,
4,
Don Loudon. Don Loudon.
4.
okay, next item on the agenda is resolution 2020-09, a resolution approving economic development agreement for Avon Landing. Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, so this is the next step. As I mentioned earlier, we did the letter of intent with the developer of Avon Landing. This is the actual agreement with Avon Landing. And this is moving quick. We are attempting to keep everything on schedule to meet the developer's timeline to start construction towards the end of June. And so I know that this document that you guys have, the proposed agreement, has some modifications on it still because we have several attorneys involved with this. We have Dan looking at things, we have our bond counsel, and then the developer's attorneys are all looking at it as well. So the changes that you see on the agreement were recommendations from Mr. Taylor, the town's attorney. We have heard back that the changes that were made by Dan were acceptable. There were 2 things that we're still working out. We made the modifications today and have sent them to the attorneys for Avon Landing. So I would maybe ask for a little leeway from the council to still approve this tonight, subject to Dan signing off on the agreement. We think probably tomorrow we'll get that sign off. I can share with you the 2 things that the developer had concerns about. The first was we had proposed to put in liquidated damages, and they did not want to agree to that. They preferred that if they failed to perform, and I guess to back up a step, just to remind you guys, this is a developer purchase bond, so the town is not investing any tax dollars in this. And so we don't have anything to lose. The developer is basically fronting the money for the development to occur. So if he fails to start or he doesn't complete it in a timely manner, he isn't going to be paid back for the cost that he's going out of pocket. So we actually felt like giving them the option of some liquidated damages would be kind of an intermediate step for them. What they're proposing the agreement to say is actually that if they fail to perform, that the agreement will be null and void, which means we would no longer be responsible for reimbursing them for their bond. So that means they're left holding all the money and they have no way of being reimbursed. So the remedy that they're proposing is actually worse than what we're proposing. And so we don't have an objection to that if the developer is okay with that. So we're okay with that language being removed. The second item related to the TIF revenue and our ability to pledge it to other projects or to use it if there's excess tax revenue for us to use that for other projects. The way that it was written in the language, it required that we had to get approval from them. And so I think it was a little bit of a miscommunication on language, and Dan actually did a good job of cleaning up that language to kind of remedy that confusion. They didn't want us to issue a bond when they had an outstanding obligation. Our concern on the staff side was that if there was excess TIF revenue, that if we wanted to do a project somewhere else, that we could do that. And so I think Dan has put in good language there that I think addresses that issue as well. And again, I believe we'll remedy that issue here in the next day or two. So It is staff's recommendation that you guys approve the resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Taylor, would you like to comment on this agreement?
Yes, I agree with everything Ryan said. There were a lot of missing items from the agreement. I inserted several suggestions about just how to make the agreement better and to protect the town. And then there's been some give and take back and forth about risk. And Ryan explained very well this idea that we suggested that we provide some interim steps before what I call the death penalty in this case, because in this case, if we terminate the agreement, they have to reimburse the town for your issuance costs, your attorney's fees and bond fees and financial consulting fees. So that's really important to us. And then they would not be reimbursed for their capital investment. So we thought, well, that seemed kind of harsh if it were, so we provided this liquidated damages provision as a way to both have some accountability and also provide maybe a lesser remedy. They really came back and said, look, we have, Avon Landing has no incentive to not complete this, to invest their money and then not get reimbursed from it by the town. So they just felt like that wasn't necessary because the hammer was already there, so to speak. So Ryan and I were comfortable with that. We were trying to make it a better agreement. On the pledge, which has been a concern of Ryan's from the beginning, this probably wouldn't come into play unless the TIF revenues greatly exceeded, the projections. We're comfortable that the revenues will support the bond, but Ryan wanted to be able to capture excess revenues, if we can call them those, for some small project or something to benefit the area. And they didn't, and they didn't want us to do that. And they want to make sure we don't spend their money, so to speak. So there's always that tension there. So what we did is we created some language that would say that we cannot pledge TIF revenues for any other purpose without their consent. And then what Ryan and I added today was we added a provision to say that they would not unreasonably withhold their consent. And so the idea there is that if there's no financial reason for them to withhold their consent, they would consent. And if they had a valid reason, then of course it would be reasonable. So Ryan and I, that's how we solved the problem. And that's, so he and I are comfortable with that now. I feel like that's where we need to be on that issue. I will say that in the process of negotiating with them, they were open to our suggestions and our concerns, and were, willing to accept our suggested changes, and we were willing to accept their ideas. So it was a very cordial and yet serious conversation. We don't always get that. I for one appreciated how they handled that. I felt like they were trying to be fair with us, just like we were trying to be with them.
I think it's safe to say too that they would want to get as much revenue out of this as they can sooner than later to get their money back. So I'm fine with certainly relying on Ryan and Mr. Taylor to negotiate those last two items and move ahead with a motion on this if everybody else is comfortable. Aaron or Robert, you got any comments, any thoughts?
It looks pretty standard from what I've seen historically from the RDC. Good work.
Robert?
My question would just be, if we were to make a motion, does it need to have a clause barring what Mr. Taylor and Mr. Cannon figure out?
Yeah, what I'd suggest is a motion approving it subject to the approval of your town attorney. And that's what we've done in the past, is I listen to what you say, and if something happens that would be inconsistent with what we talked about tonight, we would come back to you. That's how we've done it in the past, and it's worked fine for 15, 20 years now. So we are on your side, so we'll make sure you're protected.
Dawn,
You
Steve,
blame Ryan later if it doesn't work out.
I'm very pleased that we're moving forward with this. So this is obviously taken a long time for all of us. So I'm no other comment.
Dawn,
Nope, no comment. I'm okay with moving forward with it this evening.
okay, then we need somebody to make a motion regarding resolution 2020-09.
I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve resolution 2020-09 with the stipulation that it's subject to the town attorney and Ryan looking over the final details there.
We have a motion by Dawn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Aaron. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4,
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is the introduction of ordinance 2020-05. It's the bond ordinance for Avon Landing. Mr. Cannon?
Yeah, so now that you guys have approved the agreement, the next step will be to approve the bonds or approve an ordinance to allow the bonds. And so John and I had a meeting earlier this week with the Economic Development Commission. They have passed what they needed to pass to authorize these bonds. And they have recommended to you guys to approve the bonds moving forward. So this is the introduction of the ordinance to start that process. As you mentioned, it's just an introduction, so it will be on your next meeting agenda for approval.
Is this time sensitive, Ryan? I'm just looking at our calendar. Our next meeting is what, the 14th of May?
Correct, yeah. Our calendar has it being on that May 14th meeting, and it's fine to be on there. So as long as you guys still plan to have your May 14th meeting, that'll be fine.
Well, as of today, we plan on having the May 14th meeting. I don't know where we're going to have it, but we're going to have it. So
There you go.
any other comments by any council members?
Greg, I had a comment, if I may.
Mr. Taylor?
This is Dan Taylor. This is the first bond to come through your Economic Development Commission. They met, was it yesterday, John? I think it was. These days run together.
Yes.
Their process is just different in one way from your redevelopment commission, and that is if you look at the ordinance, section 2, the Economic Development Commission is required to make a finding that the project will not have an adverse competitive effect on other businesses. And we count on them to look at that. And this one's pretty easy, but I would just draw your attention to that because when you adopt the ordinance, you'll be confirming that finding. And that's an important finding for these kinds of bonds so that you're not essentially supplementing one business to run another one out of your town. And so the Economic Development Commission serves that function for us. They look at that issue. And so that's the only way it's different from other bond ordinances you've seen. So I just wanted to point that out and let you be thinking about that. But that's a good kind of safety check for the town. And our Economic Development Commission received training on that a couple of months ago. And then when they approve that, that's the finding they're making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. If there are no other comments, then we'll show that we have introduced ordinance 2020-05, the bond ordinance for Avon Landing. Next item on the agenda is legal counsel report. Mr. Taylor?
I would just report to the council that your staff, although scattered, are continuing to have regular meetings with Mitchell Ray and I and trying to make sure that the things that need to be done are getting done and that matters are being attended to. So I don't know, I don't always know what everyone knows, but I know Tom and Ryan and Jody have continued to have regular meetings with us like this and over the phone. And I know I've been in touch with the chief a couple times and the assistant chief on issues that are kind of peculiar to this public health emergency. I know and appreciate how hard they work under less than ideal circumstances. So I'd echo what several of you have said about your staff earlier. Julie has been giving me some unusual questions, but the state board of accounts is not playing nice. So we're trying to accommodate them, and we'll try to work together to do that. But I mentioned that because I just wanted you to know that I'd say the last 4 weeks have been harder than normal, not more quiet on the staff side. And I know from our side as well. So they've done a good job, and I just want you guys to know we're trying to stay on top of everything that needs to be done.
Thank you, Dan. This will be the second of our public comment opportunities. If there's somebody there that would like to make comment, as I stated earlier, you may submit those comments by emailing Tom Klein at tklein@avongov.org or via the comment area on the YouTube during the meeting. Tom, has anybody sent you an email or made comments on the YouTube comment section?
There are no comments on YouTube, and there are no comments via email.
Okay, then we'll close that portion of the agenda and move on to council comment. I think Robert started this off early on with council comments at the very beginning and liaison reports, and I know that we had 18 projects that we had identified through our 2020 strategic work session, and one of them obviously was the way that we were going to review the town manager, but also the township consolidation and a number of other items. So not to lose sight of that, and Robert, I'll throw it back to you, seeing you made the comment. If you're willing to kind of continue to carry the water, I know between maybe you and Aaron with the putting together the evaluation process for the town manager, did you still want to carry that task?
Oh yeah, that's great. Greg, I know you and I and I've spoke with Dawn. I know I briefly spoke with Aaron about this as well, but I'll make sure I'll follow up with each council members to make sure we get at least something that's not, I don't want to say in stone, something written down, something that we can actually present and set some standards, set some expectations for Tom for the town and township merger. That one, that's going to be such a long, hard, arduous process that I'm not sure I'm the perfect or the right person for that. But if I'm needed to carry that one, I will.
Aaron, did you want to work with Robert as well, or are you okay with Robert just doing that? Because I know you were kind of working on part of that as well and had a program that you were working with.
Yeah, that's fine. I can collaborate with him, and we can try and get something together within the next couple of weeks. Everyone has the material already, so I think the biggest part of that is just when we can sit down as a group again. But we can definitely do some preliminary work on that and get some feedback from everyone and get ready for when that comes to finalize it.
Thank you. Dawn, is there something out there that is near and dear to your heart that you want to work on?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, I wanted to just bring back up that Southwest annexation became effective April 14th. So, you know, that's a blessing for those people down there in that quarter that wanted to keep their lots in the surrounding area in the estate in the 5-acre agriculture zone. And I'd like to see us keep moving forward with that northwest corner of our district with Mr. Faree. I'd like to see letters go out again to him since he didn't respond to the phone call, the last call, and maybe get something set up with him to meet mid-May if possible. And then I'd like to maybe expand on that southwest corner. So can we feed off of what we've now annexed and go with the contiguous other parcels that surround that to expand on what we've been able to accomplish down there in that corner. So that would be one thing. And then on the 100 South project, I had spoken with Tom last week and had tasked him to get with Jody and to provide us with, I guess, some of the process and some of the quality standards and things like that that are being used in Plainfield and Brownsburg for their warehouse buildings and their commercial warehouse buildings and industrial standards. And so I received something today from, I guess, Delbert put together, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I think you're going to continue to work on getting me that. But what I was asking for was their construction standards, their architectural standards, so that we're not recreating the process. We already know what we can drive Northfield Drive and look and see what Brownsburg's looks like. We can do the same in Plainfield. So, you know, if we can just incorporate that, and if we're going to continue to keep 100 South as a PUD down there, then kind of in line with our UDO manual that we're coming up with, that consolidated UDO, I'd like to see us have something readily available, some standards to hand to our industrial and our commercial developers, the same as we do our residential developers. In other words, these are the standards we'd like to see in our PUD. Here you go, and save them a lot of their frustration, save a lot of time with the Planning Commission and BZA and council, and just to smooth out the process a little bit. And I think that if we could do that and add it to our UDO, then we're that much, it's going to streamline the process a lot for us and help us move those areas forward quicker.
Tom, Mr. Klein, we had a conversation early on as well, and I think you kind of know what we want to ask Jody to get some other information. I think really we got this architectural standards but we're looking more of a timeline, a procedural thing of what a developer and builder can look at from a timeline once they want to start their project, to get it through our process to get them an approval. And I think the sense is that our timeline is a little bit more cumbersome than other communities, certainly one across the street and one three miles away. And we want to compare how they're doing things. And, you know, we're not trying to recreate the wheel. If someone's got a better mousetrap, let's look at it and see if it makes sense for us as well. So I think you understand what she's looking for, Tom.
Yeah. We talked to one of the engineer for one of the projects for 100 South about the timeline. So we can work on getting a comparison of our timeline with Brownsburg and Plainfield to kind of see how we are doing. We did identify a few steps where we can combine them to make it quicker for us in our existing process. So I think that should help them as well. But yeah, we can work on that.
All right, thank you. One thing too about the Southwest annexation, Tom, I'll remind you that Ron Sears had sent us a letter that we were going to hold off on to responding to him until after this came to closure, which it now has, and it's been annexed into Avon. So if you can reach out to him, and I know, Robert, you're kind of working on annexation as well, and I don't want Dawn to step on your toes, but she's certainly willing to help you with the Free up there at the northwest quadrant. And I think if we can get Adrian Panko and some of the other people down there in the southwest, they've seen what we said we're going to do, and if we can get them to expand that, because there's still more to come down there, and we need to continue to work on that. So
Greg, I'll give you just a little highlight there. So Tom, Ryan, and I, shortly before the pandemic kicked off, sat down and sort of hashed out what maybe our next steps will be, just to sort of get a few possible annexation locations in the queue. Of course, pending the Southwest annexation, the clear next step was that northwest side with Mr. Not Dupree. Help me out.
Marie.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, thank you. Tom, I think we have an opening on the redevelopment commission. Mr. Getz had discussed about resigning due to his, I think his work schedule. And we were gonna check to see if Harold Heiser could be on the redevelopment commission as well as the redevelopment authority. Mr. Taylor, can he be on both of those? Do you know?
Dan's nodding his head. Yes. Yeah, we did confirm that serving on the RDA does not mean you're not a citizen to be appointed to the RDC.
Well, Mr. Getz's position was appointed by the town council, and I was just trying to look at this to see how we could maybe speed up the process by looking at the applicants that we used at the beginning of the year. And the only one out there is Mr. Heiser, who said he would be on both. And I think if the council is okay with it, I'll have Mr. Klein reach out to Mr. Heiser and see if he's interested in being on both the RDC and the RDA.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I think this is just a benefit to all the applications that we got. That's something we talked about earlier in the year. We've not quite had that volume of applicants, so this gives us this benefit when things like this happen. So that's kind of great news.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Harold and see if he's interested for you guys.
Steve, is there anything else that you'd like to see done, or you want to kind of pick one of these 18 items out and carry the water for us?
Oh, well, that's fine. Really, I think what I could be doing is maybe taking it a step above with, I've been working with Ryan on the, pavement marking and things like that, or trying to track that. So I'd be glad to continue working with that. I like hearing what Don's saying on the 100 south of the big boxes, getting the standards, working with that. So I'm open. Anything on those items, I think I've got capacity open that I could do a few things. One thing I did want to comment is we don't know how long this virus is going to be going on, but boy, I'd still like to encourage our developers to make the comments and come to us early to talk about things, because that's one way we talked about streamlining and not getting them caught up in the Plan Commission. In other words, if there's something that they have out there that's controversial, they can approach all of us there in a public meeting, and we can kind of give them a heads up that no, they shouldn't be investing $100,000 just in investigations. I think that those are very valuable steps that it's going to be difficult to plow forward with this current environment, but I think we need to keep trying that. Now that's a roundabout way to say, Greg, name off a couple and I'll see if I can pick a few of those things off the list. I don't have them in front of me here.
Well, I know we talked about unifying town and township government was one.
Yep.
I'm going to send out, Tom sent me a draft of a letter to send to NDOT regarding 36 design, which is number 2. Number 3 was county public safety lit money. Tom, I think if anything, you should probably carry that and see what other communities are trying to do, because I just think with this virus now and property taxes being delayed or income taxes and stuff, everything's been pushed out. I think we're going to see a drop in revenue, and we, as always, we need to find ways to generate more revenue. So if you can look into that, as well as the wheel tax was the 4th one. Free was 5, and then 6 was the cell tower nose. I don't know where we're at on that, but I think, we got the top 6. We already got the video camera put in for live streaming. We haven't been able to use it yet, but it's ready for when we do come back to town hall. Chief Stoops, did you have anything for us?
No.
Mr. Taylor, do you have anything for us?
No, sir.
Council calendar, Mr. Klein.
Next council meeting, hopefully will be May 14th. We'll see what the governor does on his order next week to see if we can have a meeting, the council chamber or via Zoom. We will advertise and let people know either way before then.
All right, well, I thank you for putting this together. I think it worked out pretty well. It's kind of neat, kind of different, but I do miss everybody's smiling faces. So hopefully we'll be back together sometime in the month of May. If there's nothing else to come before us, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good job.